All right. Welcome everybody. This is Intro to the Austin Startup Scene. I'm Josh Baird. I just took a picture of everybody, and I was gonna post it to Twitter, but I can tag 10 of you in it. So anybody want to shout out their Twitter names?
Wing Girls Club.
What is it?
Wing Girls Club.
Wing.
Girls.
So 2 G's.
Yeah.
Wing Girls Club. All right, I got it.
At W3PR.
W3PR.
Athletic foodie.
TM.
No.
No, that's a different one.
Yeah.
Wait. Wait. This would. No, but it says TM in the name.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Javaro, Jivaro.
Jivaro. Headhunters. Anybody else?
Mine is too long.
Too long. Jesse, what I couldn't find dinner elf.
Underscore elf was that?
Underscore elf. Oh, dinner underscore elf.
Somebody halfway around the world is dinner elf. He never uses it.
How long? Well, we can talk about that after. No more?
Music's app, MUSXAPP. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. At least that's what we get. Okay. So this is Intro to Austin Accelerators, or I've been playing with the renaming it to How to Get Into an Accelerator. I think that's more what actually people want to know. This is part of a talk that we do. We do this talk once a month, so this is the second Tuesday of the month, I think. And we do a different talk every Tuesday. So the first Tuesday is Intro to Fundraising, which is like I'm looking for or how to meet angel investors. This is Intro to Accelerators, and we cover all the different accelerators in Austin, or try to do our best. And that's how to get into an accelerator. Next Tuesday is Intro to the Austin Startup Scene. That really covers how to plug into all the startup scene, and has a lot of people that are new to Austin or looking to get a job at a startup or work at a startup, and people that would come to all the other ones. And then the last Tuesday, the fourth Tuesday, is Intro to Angel Investing and Mentoring, and so that's for people that want to get involved in the different like accelerator programs and other things as an investor or a mentor. So thank you for coming to this one. All these slides are online. The main site for all of these talks is ATX Startup Scene, but my SlideShare account actually has the actual slides, and then we also record and stream all the events that happen in here. There's a camera up there on the ceiling, and so you can find all those on YouTube at Austin Tech Live, and there's all the previous talks like this that we do every week. And what's interesting about those is there's always different people up here answering the questions at the end, and so there's all these intros to fundraising, but with different investors getting different questions. So it is worth going back and looking at some of those things. I'm going to try to, we don't have a ton of time, I'm going to try to cover some of the basic things while we're here in person, and then try to leave as much time as possible for Q&A. But obviously there's a ton of great stuff on the internet, and so these are some of what I think are some of the most helpful posts about fundraising in general and accelerators and other things like that. Paul Graham has this kind of like seminal post about fundraising that's awesome. He's one of the founders of Y Combinator. Venture Hacks this was the site that the people who built AngelList did before they did AngelList. So it's like their blog about fundraising and startups and things like that. Really great stuff. A little old, a little out of date, but in general still really good. This VC economics post is really good because it really helps you understand what the business model of a venture capitalist is. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs that are going and asking for money don't really understand how that part of the business works. So they don't understand the people they're asking for money. And so that's really helpful in that way. And then Sam Altman recently did a class at Stanford where there's a bunch of great talks, but this one in particular is a video with Mark Andreessen and Ron Conway that's really good. And then he also recently published this Startup Playbook, which is another great post about startups. So some things I would go check out that have a lot of other information and links. Here are 3 really great books if you're looking for something a little something you can pick up and hold. Get Backed was written by 2 Austin entrepreneurs. It was just recently released and it's already a bestseller. It's by Evan Baer, no relation to me, and Evan Loomis. It's a really practical book that really walks you through how to build your pitch deck and how to actually go pitch investors. It's meant to be a fairly a tactical kind of tell you what to do and how to do it. And so it's been very popular. Venture Deals, this book by Brad Feld and Jason Mendelsohn is Brad Feld's one of the founders of Techstars and he's a venture capitalist. This book is like it's like the Bible of startups and venture capital and how this whole world works. Everybody refers back to this book, so that's a great thing to check out if you want a good overview. And then Matt Blumberg is a good friend of mine. He actually was the CEO of the company that bought my last company, and so I got to work with him there. And he wrote this great book called Startup CEO, and it covers all kinds of things about being the CEO of a startup, but in particular also covers fundraising in the early stages and can be really helpful. So real quickly, love to get an idea of who's here in the room. How many of you have a startup you're working on? Okay, about half of you. How many of you are planning to apply for accelerators? Some of you have already applied to an accelerator. Less. Why else? If you don't have a startup and you're not planning to apply to accelerator, why else are you here? Yes.
I've been in the Bay Area for 20 years, my firm has, and so we have opened an office in Austin about a year ago and just wanted to find out really what's going on the ground in Austin. And
cool.
We heard a lot of great things about this, so we wanted to come and just check it out.
Awesome. You might like the one next week also because
Yeah.
it's a little broader.
I was like, we'll be here next week.
Yeah.
We heard that.
Anybody else?
Similar story, moved our company here from Los Angeles and just recently, and we're looking to figure out, the lay of the land here.
Was that a
Everybody
PR
keeps
firm?
talking about Capital Factory. Pardon?
Is that a PR firm? Is that
It's actually a digital marketing agency.
digital marketing? Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, great. Well, hopefully you'll find this helpful. Like I said, you guys also might find the one next week in particular helpful. So what's different about Austin accelerators maybe versus other ones? Because this talk tries to be focused particularly on what's here in Austin because there's stuff everywhere, and there's probably other things you could watch online about other places. The first thing I'll say is I've been pretty fortunate. I've traveled to a lot of different startup communities around the U.S. and around the world, and they're actually all really similar. Like everywhere that's not Silicon Valley and not New York City has a lot of, it sounds the same. They have the same conversations. They all think they have this different their own unique problems, and they have a lot of really the same problems. And I think a lot of the challenges and trends they have are really similar too. And so these things I'm actually going to say about Austin are most of the things that most other places would say as well. And Austin, what we have going for us is, of the places that aren't Silicon Valley and aren't New York City, we're awesome. Like we're like the top of that list. Like we have so much other stuff going for us. And everybody wishes that they were Austin. As I go to the other places, they all look up to Austin. They talk about, I hear them say things. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and they were like, well, if you were in Silicon Valley or Boston or Austin, and I just heard that sentence and I was like, what? I can't believe you even said that. But they all look at it that way. But actually, we're very much like them, and they have a lot of the same challenges. And that's because we while we have a lot of great things going on, we haven't had these huge successes and decades of that Silicon Valley has, and that they've kind of built up their investor community on. But so one of those things is Austin's very traction focused, and you'll find that most of the accelerators and investors and other things here are very traction focused. And what that means is they want to see what you've actually got going. So you don't get funded with an idea unless you've built 2 or 3 companies before, and then you do. But if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you don't have this great track record of having done it a bunch of times, they're going to expect you to show what you can do first. And so that's gotten easier and easier. When I first started my company about 20 years ago, it was a lot more expensive to start a tech company than it is now. Many of the major cost centers have just actually disappeared. So you used to have to go buy a bunch of hardware, and now there's cloud computing. You don't have to buy any hardware. And then you used to have to go buy a bunch of software, and now it's all open source, and you don't have to buy any software. And then you used to have to go spend a bunch of money on advertising and billboards and just broadcast mediums that were not very effective. And now you can do online marketing and social marketing and other things that are much more cost effective and cheaper. So all these costs are going away, and that democratizes entrepreneurship. It makes it easier for anybody to go do it, but that also means you're kind of expected to do more before people are going to throw money at you or work with you. And so when we started Capital Factory 6 or 7 years ago, our expectation was that people were going to come in with an idea, and we were going to help them like build the thing that summer, or that over the summer, and then they were going to launch it, and like that was the thing. And very quickly, that it wasn't, even from the very beginning, it really wasn't that. But very quickly, we realized that wasn't it. People coming in, they had something already. They had already built something. They had a couple people using it. Maybe had a little bit of investors. Maybe had something going on, and they were able to show what they could do. And then we were helping them to really take that to the next level. So, what is a classic accelerator? When we started Capital Factory, there was no word for accelerator. Now, at the time, I think we were one of maybe the first 5 or 6. We were a pretty fast follower to Y Combinator and Techstars. Now I think there's like 5,000 of them. So there's a lot. Now they have a name. They're called accelerators. Why are they called accelerators? Because Incubator was a bad name. People didn't like that word. So they needed a different word, so they picked accelerator so they could not be incubators. And so what does that mean? Well, they're basically, it's all modeled after what Y Combinator started and Techstars I think really formalized. And that's this 3-month program. They generally have a defined start and an end. You're typically in a cohort of about 10 other companies. And you get some amount of seed funding, usually at least $20,000. These days, more likely upwards of $100,000. They're typically taking an equity stake in the company in exchange for this of anywhere from 5 to 15% of the company. Sometimes it's free, or a grant or a loan or something like that, but that's usually the way it works. And typically, what's going to happen one way or another, just from like the practical nature of like personal relationships and how many people you can actually talk to and have a serious relationship with, is you're going to find 1 or 2 really great people you're going to get to work with closely who are going to be very helpful to you, and probably a handful of other people that you're going to go to for one-off things that might know a lot about one thing you need help with, but they're not the person you're going to and talking to all the time. And those are, you can call them your mentors, you can call them advisors, you can call them, they might be consultants, you can call them lots of different things, but that's one of the big value a lot of people get out of it. They're typically going to have like classes or talks and speakers come in. I think you'll find that the most well-known or most highly respected groups, they don't claim that's the value of the program. So you should not go to an accelerator to like take classes or like what you're going to learn in a class. That's not what it's for. And while we do those classes because we like doing them and it's fun to do things in person and there's great people you get to interact with, pretty much any class you could go like get in a room. I hope there's a better version of that on the internet somewhere, right? Like somebody, so it's like we want to create interactions between people and things like that. But I wouldn't get too hung up on what you're going to learn in a class. And then they're going to work with you on your pitch deck, basically help get you ready for investors. Most companies coming in aren't really ready for investors. They don't know how to position themselves or talk about it, and they often have things they need to fix about the company structure. And then they typically have like a demo day or an event at the end to get you exposure and get you in front of investors and press. And after that, if they're good, they've got an alumni network. They've been doing it for a long time. There's all these other companies that have been through it, and people that you can tap into, and people that will, continue to help and support you, and that you can work with. So that's kind of the classic accelerator. This is actually not what Capital Factory is like anymore, but that's what, when most people talk about accelerator, that's what they're talking about. And that, like I said, that was really, I think, kind of institutionalized by Techstars. Here are the accelerators here in Austin. You can see that there's a number of different ones, and to start with, I'd focus on the last column because that's really where most people are going to kind of narrow it down, because they all have different focuses, they have different markets that they work on, and so Capital Factory and Techstars are pretty broad on working with tech companies, which can be in health or in lots of social good or lots of other places. Athena Health is a big company that has offices in many different places. They have a big office here in Austin, and they have a big network of doctors. And they, in particular, I think this is brilliant. Like if I was as a strategy for this company and what they're going to do and where they can really add value, I think it's really smart. They don't try to do everything. They don't try to even do everything in health. They want to work with companies who sell to the doctors in their doctor network, because that's a great partnership. If they can find an early startup and they can invest in that company and then help them go sell into all this big network of doctors that they have, that makes their service better, helps their doctors, and they make that company successful, and they would invest. It's brilliant, love it. That's a great, well-aligned, really good kind of vertical program. International Accelerator is actually focused on bringing companies from outside of the U.S. here to Austin, so probably not applicable to most of you. SKU is a really great program. They focus on consumer packaged goods, so think energy drinks, granola bars, physical products, things where the key to their success is a lot about distribution, ending up on store shelves and having distribution partners in production and other things like that. Not most of the stuff that we deal with here at Capital Factory. And they've been very, very successful. Unlimited USA focuses on social impact or social good companies that are fairly new player here in town, but doing some good work. And then Capital Factory Techstars, like I said, much more broad, working with tech companies in general. Other differentiators are going to be, how much money they get, how much equity they take. It's even all of that's fairly standardized. There's some outliers, but it all falls within pretty similar ranges. And then they all have different cycles as well. Athena's program is really ongoing, and you can kind of work with them at any time. They're pretty low volume. They're only doing one, 2, 3 companies a year. Capital Factory is the largest program or the highest volume. So we're working with about 50 companies a year, so about 5 companies a month. So every month we have a cycle for new companies to apply. We just accepted, I think, 7 or 8 companies last week from the February cycle, and where most programs are really effectively a 3-month program, our program doesn't have a defined period of time. Like there's no end date to it. Most companies, it's 6 to 12 months is how long we're working with them. But really, we're working with them until they either become profitable and sustainable on their own, or they go raise a Series A round of funding and they've got a bunch of money and they go get, then they kind of move out and are scaling, or they go out of business. That's more how we're set up. And they also have different events, the demo days and other things where they promote the companies. Some of the companies that have gone through Accelerators here in Austin, just to give you some examples. The first company we ever invested in at Capital Factory were 2 guys from UCLA that had just moved out here, and their company's called Spare Foot. It's right across the street. They have about 100 employees. They've raised $60 million in funding. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they own self-storage. If you do anything with self-storage online, you are going through them. They basically took this industry that was not very up with technology and other things like that, or online marketing, and were able to insert themselves into that, get the inventory online, and really become the dominant player there, and they've done very, very well. More recent one's called CrateJoy. They are a subscription marketplace, so if you want to run a website and sell stuff, you might use something called Shopify, which is just like a tool, so you can have a shopping cart on your website and you can sell stuff. If you want to have a subscription box, a box of the month, which is very popular these days, they have like a box of dog treats, or a box of clothes to try, or a box of makeup, or a box of healthy foods. There's all kinds of things that you can get these monthly subscriptions for. Shopify doesn't work for that because of just the way it's monthly and things like that. It's just not set up for it. And what this is basically an entire turnkey system for a small business or a large business to be able to offer a box of the month, and they handle the fulfillment, the back end, the printing the labels. Not when I say fulfillment, sorry, they don't actually touch the products, but they do everything else. They help you buy it, sign up for it, do the billing, print the labels, like everything else to manage that business. And here are just some other Austin companies that I think are some of the more successful ones that have been through Accelerators, and some of the different accelerators that they've been through. So almost to the end of the presentation part, and then we'll go to Q&A, but just some quick tips on just actually step-by-step, like what would you do to get into an accelerator. I'm sure this is not perfect. This is just me just trying to think through what do I see people doing. So first thing I would do is I'd go make an AngelList profile. That's like the equivalent of your business plan. No one's going to read a business plan, so don't actually write a business plan. But that'll ask you all the right questions that you need that investors are going to want to know and other people are going to want to know. And so that's a really good start. I'd look at what's available in your geography and vertical. So what that means is, so in this case, what's available here in Austin. And then if you're in health tech, I would look at what health tech programs are available all over the world, because there's a lot of different vertical programs like that. And that's could be a reason to go somewhere else for a short period of time to plug into what they're doing, and they can help bring you the vertical specific investors and mentors and customers and things like that. Like with everything else, leverage your personal network. It's usually bigger than you think it is. So really talking to everybody that you know and spreading the word and spending time going out and reaching out to people that you think might already know what you're doing, but you haven't really sat down and talked to them, and so that you're making sure you leverage everything you can. The best recommendation comes from other founders of successful companies. That works for investors and for accelerators. So if you are trying to game the system or line yourself up to make sure that you get accepted, you want to go talk to people that have already been through it and try to get them bought into what you're doing and impressed with you and get them to put in a good word, right? So for me, one of our most successful companies is Sparefoot. So Chuck Gordon is the CEO of Sparefoot. If Chuck sends me an email and says, hey, I just met this company, they're really awesome, you should look at them for the accelerator, you better believe I take that really seriously and I'm gonna make that a top priority, right? Because he's somebody I really, really respect. And that's the top of the food chain. Next would be other mentors or investors. Lawyers are kind of in the middle of the stack, but that's not actually the best reference. But they're not bad, but just not, that's not as good as some of these other things. But just leveraging that. I said mentors. Make a great video. So video content is, video production and video content is becoming more and more important. I say make a great video. That doesn't mean it has to be great production quality. It doesn't have to be that you have a professional person edit it or something. But being very thoughtful is really important. And a huge part of the video is you have to be in it. They have to see you, and you have to talk and see you interacting or talking with the team as much as possible, because that is what the video is about. It's about them knowing you and who you are. They can read all the stats on your application or things like that, and that's your chance to make an impression and to be remembered. And I'd focus on traction. Like I said before, traction is really important. It's what all of these things are looking for. When I look at an AngelList profile, I just scroll down to the traction section. It's the first thing that I do. I had to realize this from seeing myself do it, but I barely even read anything else. The first thing I want to know is this thing real? That's it. Is this a pipe dream? Is this thing real? And I scroll down the traction section, and I want to see, have they done anything, and what's real about this? And then I scroll back up and find out what they do. And be receptive to feedback. Everyone thinks they're receptive. A lot of people are not receptive, and investors and accelerators and other people are going to want to work with you because they feel like you are listening and you learn and you're going to be receptive to the suggestions that they give. And I think that's the last one. Know your market is really saying, do your homework, know your business and your market as best you can, because if you walk into an investor or an accelerator or anyone else and they think they know more about the market than you do, you are not going to do very well, right? They want to think you're the expert and you know everything about it, and so you should really do your homework and be up to speed. Here are the Austin VCs. Fortunately, this slide is out of date almost every time I put it up because we have new investors and new VCs coming to Austin all the time. Here are the ones that are based here. I need to make another slide of ones who are not based here but have recent investments here because there's more and more of those as well. But here are the different groups. Most of them are Series A, which would be the investors that most early stage companies would want to go talk to after you probably had some angel funding. Build Group is a fairly new one that's focused on later stage investments, growth companies, which is really great because we did not have that here in Austin. Clayton Christopher just launched a brand new fund focused on CPG, consumer packaged goods. He's the founder of Sweet Low Tea and Deep Eddy Vodka, and was also helped start SKU. Live Oak and Silverton are probably the two most active here in Austin, and S3 is not on here, JD. I missed S3. S3's been very, very active recently too. And then Sante really just does biotech, so not as active here in Austin. Offset Ventures is actually the kind of the, I don't know what to call it, the spin out of Austin Ventures. So Chris Pacitti is a partner at Austin Ventures, and he's got a new fund where they're focused on more pretty much B2B tech companies. And True Wealth Ventures is a new fund focused on particularly investing in diverse teams with female founders that are generally in kind of the home and consumer markets. So with that, I want to invite Jesse to come on up here. Jesse's been waiting patiently. Jesse is the founder of Dinner Elf, which is one of the startups here at Capital Factory, and is going through the Capital Factory Accelerator right now. We always try to have some people that have been through different programs up here, and we'll often have people from that have gone through Techstars or Y Combinator or other ones as well, just so there's different people to talk to. I think we're right on time. It's 5 o'clock. So basically, we've got about 45 minutes to answer any questions that you may have, and you can ask about. It can be about how to get in accelerators, about Capital Factory. I'm a mentor at Techstars. I'm happy to talk to you about Techstars. We've got a bunch of our companies that have gone to Y Combinator. I'm not claiming I'm an expert at any of that stuff, but I'll do my best, to help, talk about that and how we feel about it. Obviously, you can answer questions about Capital Factory, and then are happy to answer questions if you have a specific question about your startup or something like that. Inevitably, at the end of this presentation, there's a whole bunch of people come and line up, and they want to come ask me questions one-on-one. And almost every question they asked should have been answered to their questions that everybody else would have wanted to know too. So I would encourage you to, if you're thinking that, you can still come ask me questions after too, but I'd encourage you to consider asking in front of everybody. So.
One of the slides you showed that went past very quickly seemed to imply that certain companies went through multiple accelerator programs.
Yes.
And what's that about? I would think you go through a single accelerator and you're good to go. Is that not the case?
It's usually the case, but often companies will go through multiple, and sometimes I feel like there are some companies that think it's a competition to see how many they can go through.
Is it mostly for the funding or the mentoring, or why would they do that?
It's gonna be a combination of different things. I'd say normally it's because for one reason or another, the company did not progress as quickly or as far as they wanted to, and so and that doesn't mean that the accelerator they were in failed. I mean, lots of these companies don't work and they have to pivot, and they might be that they come up with a new idea and they pivot to something slightly different, and they're now going to give that a try. It could be that there were different types of programs, especially as there are now these vertical programs that are focused on specific markets. You might do one that's more of a general one, and then you might then go towards one very specific to your market, because they bring, in particular, usually direct customer relationships, which are really valuable. And then and so I'd say that's the general answer. In the case of Capital Factory, when we started, we were very similar to Techstars. And so we did that for 3 years. And then about 4 years ago, we really changed our program, and we intentionally designed it to be compatible with other programs, because what we do now is I think different, and actually at somewhat of a different stage. And so we designed the amount of equity we take, the timing of it, a bunch of the other parts, so that we don't care if you do another program, and we think many companies might want to. And we've had a lot of companies do Capital Factory and Techstars, or Capital Factory and Y Combinator, or Capital Factory and DreamIt, or other programs like that. We've there's 4 of the 10 Techstars companies that they just announced in the current Techstars class have all been through Capital Factory already. This is the first year where many of them have gone that way. We've also had a number of them go the other way, where after they finish Techstars, and they're like, hey, I'm done with Techstars, but I'm still going to be here in Austin, and they want to be part of the stuff going on here and plugged into the pipeline of mentors and introductions and opportunities here, and so they do that as well. So we've had quite a few companies do both. But I'd say usually if you take the Capital Factory example out, because it's a little different, usually it's, they pivoted, they went to do something else, and they're kind of trying again.
Thank you. What's the thing most companies probably get out of the Capital Factory Accelerator that is most beneficial to them?
Probably for me, huh?
You want to try?
Quick background, I moved to Austin a little over 2 years ago. I started a company back in 2001. It's still going and kind of funding the business that I'm doing now. I moved here pretty deliberately for the startup environment of Austin. I looked at a lot of different cities. I came to Capital Factory probably a year after being here. I was at another co-working space prior to here. And so your question is kind of like, why do you join a co-working space or Capital Factory?
What's the most beneficial thing you get out of being an accelerator?
Yeah. I would say mentors for me. It is, so I came into Capital Factory and I worked in co-working for, 3 or 4 months just to get a flavor for the place, and then they have a number of mentors that if you're just working here, you can talk to. And for me, having started a business a long time ago, I think for a long time, I had it in my mind that I knew what I was doing, and I was just going to kind of plow ahead and go for it. And it took me a while to figure out that you're never as smart as other people giving you input, and it takes a little while to kind of put your fist down and say, I'm completely open to anything that you want to tell me, and I'm open to change, and I recognize that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and to kind of accept that. So I joined the Accelerator program to get kind of the second tier of mentors. I found on a couple of occasions, in fact, there were one or two situations where I was booked for somebody, and then they took me off because they wanted to just talk to accelerator companies. So I joined the Accelerator, and I have spent a lot of time with a lot of different mentors. A lot of people will join a program like this for the matching funds and for the money. I have a lot of opinions on that, but that's something that I might pursue down the road. It's kind of in my back pocket, but for me, it's mentors, mentors, mentors.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would add, I mean, I think it's people, and mentors are a huge part of that, but that's really what it is. And for the, different companies, it's different things, but it comes down to, it's first investors, first customers, first employees. And those are all, each of those things are super, super key, and for different companies and different people, they might prioritize those three things differently. But that's the value. And really the secret for Capital Factory, our thing, a lot of it's about scale and about density. And there's a magic thing that happens from having so many people here and so much stuff happening that attracts those three things. It means when investors come to Austin, they call me and they email me and they're like, hey, I'm coming to Austin in 2 weeks. I want to meet health tech companies. I want to meet ed tech companies. I want to meet whoever. Can I come by Capital Factory? And so that creates opportunities for us to make those introductions. The same thing happens with really big companies, like big car companies and big health companies and big universities and others, and they come asking for those same kinds of things. And then all the events that we do bring in all the talent, all the programmers and entrepreneurs and other people that they might hire. And so that gives us basically those three pieces, and like I said, different people value those different ways.
The peer network here is really interesting. I worked in another co-working space, and I would say that the folks that come here are kind of more developed in kind of their business plans and traction and so on. And I don't know how many of you guys already have a startup, or if you're kind of in the process or whatever, but a lot of times having a startup is kind of a lonely existence, and a lot of people don't understand it unless they're going through it with you. And to be able to have a peer set of people around here that you see quite frequently is therapeutic, in my opinion.
And I would also just add, by no question in my mind, you learn as much from the other companies that are just your peers that are just happen to be doing the same things you are as you do from the mentors. Like, I think the mentors are great, but you learn just as much from the people that are actually just doing the same things you are, and are facing a lot of the same challenges.
I do have a couple of questions. What kind of traction in terms of sales or anything you look into before taking a startup to Accelerator?
That's really different for different kinds of companies and what you're trying to do, what industry it's in, and other things like that. I'd say for a purely software business, like the most common thing we see, which isn't, doesn't mean it's not even half of them, but probably the most common thing is what I call B2B SaaS. It's a SaaS business. It's some website that you operate as a service that people pay a monthly fee to use, and you sell it to other businesses. That type of a business, and you're just generic business, not schools or hospitals or something really complicated. That type of business is pretty straightforward to build. You don't need a lot of resources or money to build it. The sales cycles are generally shorter. So you should be able to go get a couple customers using that. That might be one big customer, it might be 5 customers, but some small number of customers using it that says people really want it and there's some demand for it, and ideally those people are paying for it. The more that you're doing something very new that nobody's done before, the more significant it is whether or not somebody else pays for it. Because whether or not, otherwise you might be able to know, like, okay, I know people are going to pay for that if they'll go do it. And then if you're building something that's like hardware, like, it's different because often it takes a lot more money to get to a hardware product. So you might not have built it, but you might have a Kickstarter done, which might show that there's a lot of demand for it and that you can market it and other things like that. And then the last thing is certain industries. So if you're selling to hospitals are really hard to sell to. Schools are really hard to sell to. They have long sales cycles that often have buying periods that only happen once a year or things like that. And so having like a health tech company that's got 2 hospitals really interested in using their thing, that's a pretty good start. Because it just takes longer and it's harder to get to those things.
Yeah. Do you take into account sales in other countries, like overseas?
Sure.
And the other question, does having a seat here at the co-working help with getting to the accelerator?
Yeah, it definitely helps. It's by no means required. I'd say probably a third to a half of the companies that we accept work here first. So not not less than half of them, but a lot of them. And it definitely helps a lot because if you don't do that, then we get to know you through the interview process. So we get to read your application online, and we get to watch a video, and maybe if you get through far enough through the process, we get to sit down and talk to you and meet with you one-on-one with 30 minutes at a time, a few people, and we have to decide based on that. But if you work here, then I see you every day. A whole bunch of other people see you every day, and we recognize you, and we have some idea what you're working on. And when you come in, we just know a lot more about you, and so
Sure.
it's a lot easier. And quite frankly, I will say, we're more likely to you're more likely to get further in the interview process because if you work here, we are more likely to be like, okay, well, we should talk. Crap, they've been working here for 6 months. We should at least sit down and talk to them and find out what they're if we haven't already find out what they're doing and things like that. So I think it certainly helps. It doesn't hurt, but it's definitely also not required at all.
Let me jump in on that. I did, and I would recommend working here beforehand, not to get in, but for your own sake. Hang out here and get to meet some people and talk to the people that are doing it because it's a decision point for you of whether or not you want to join and give up a part of your company, et cetera, for this. So speak to some mentors and do some of the sit downs with people and get a sense of whether or not it's good for you or not. But do it for you. Would be my thought.
And it's easy, you can get a cohort light membership's like $200 a month. You have to do it for 1 month, so come hang out.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question in regards to the mentoring in as it relates to technology. Let's say one guy comes in, he's building a UI with a certain framework, and he doesn't have that expertise, or he doesn't have. Is there a lot of cross communication for helping to advance product or an idea?
Yeah, there definitely is. It happens on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
A lot of it's peer to peer, and even just there's a Facebook group of everybody that works here,
Okay.
and that's where a lot of that happens. People
Yeah,
post
right.
hey, is anyone using this technology, or
Yeah.
anybody know anyone that does this, or I'm looking for a consultant, or I'm trying to hire someone that does something, right?
Okay.
People are helping each other with those things all the time. When we talk about mentoring, we're generally talking about it's more business mentoring is what it just ends up being. We have some mentors that come in that are very technical and are they're focused on very specific things. And it also is common if someone's having a specific problem, well, we know lots of people. We'll get someone to come in and talk to them. That's easy to do.
Sure. Okay.
But the things that people tend to be using the most and I think really engaging on is it's more business mentoring.
Mhm.
It's, how do I raise money for my company? What should my actual business be? How do
Yeah.
I sell it? How do I
Go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, how do I do other
Whatever,
stuff?
yeah, okay.
How to hire people, all kinds of things like that. Questions?
Kind of a follow-on to that question, then, either just working here in general or in the Accelerator program, if it is a technical product, can you guys help with finding coders and, the other folks that you're gonna need to hire?
Yeah.
You guys can help with that?
I want to emphasize one of the things about the way this place works is there's no help desk you go to and you're like, hey, I need this, can you do it for me? You gotta go take it. It's like a place and there's you're in a fertile garden full of stuff, but you have to go harvest it. And so yes, there are. We're teaming with it. We have a coding school on the 5th floor, churning out classes of programmers. We have every technical meetup there is meets here. So every night there's hundreds of more people coming that are those people that you want to meet. And we host events here like co-founder meetups, and we have the mentoring sessions and other things. So there are so many opportunities for that to happen, and that's why people come here and that's what they're doing. But we don't do it for you. It's not there's nobody whose job is to go figure that out. You got to go. But the idea is we've created a place where those things happen just by the nature of being here and
So
what
you just
happens
gotta
here.
hang out and be here when the people walk through the door.
Kind of. I'd say it's more intentional than that. But yeah. But part of it's being here and engaging in it.
But you're talking about something that's different from the Accelerator program. That's just the co-working, correct?
Great question.
to
So
some
yeah,
degree,
it
of course,
is a
nobody's
little
doing it.
confusing. Yeah, because we do there's both parts of it. So you can get a lot of those benefits from working here. And the way to think about the Accelerator is it's a filter, right? And so when a big investor comes in from California and they say, I want to meet startups. I'm not going to speak for all of them. There may be some of them that would have the time and want to sit down and just meet with anybody that has an idea and try to give them some advice. But most of them they're really pressed for time. They have to be really picky about who they meet with, and they only want to meet with companies that have reached a certain kind of like milestones, right? And that's a big part of what the Accelerator effectively does, is it's a filter to help identify which companies have reached certain milestones so that they can make the best use of everybody's time. And that's going to apply across all these things, right? So when you can go hustle and you can do all that stuff I said, but another big part of the Accelerator is like, I'm here every day and I'm talking to lots of people and my name's on lots of stuff, so like lots of people know about that. And when you ask around and they say, hey, I want to work at a startup, there's a lot of people that'd be like, oh, you going by Capital Factory? Have you talked to Josh? And so I get these emails from like people I don't know out of nowhere, and people I do know very well, that are like, hey, I really want to go work at a startup, here's what I'm looking for. And I get to decide like who to send it to. Well, I send it to the companies that I think are the best and that we invested in first, right? And so that's part of getting into that inner part of the circle. And it's not just me, this is happening with a ton of other people. So at the same time, when I think if there's anything I think we've done particularly really well, and we also work really hard at, it's we do still spread the love around, and it's like, so, if somebody comes in and they're looking for a particular type of company, and that company, we don't, we've got some of them in the Accelerator, but there's another one that's co-working here that's a really good fit for what they're looking for, then we're still gonna make that introduction and help connect them. And when we do that, and the same thing would be if it was a Techstars company that we didn't invest in, but I know about them, and it's because that's part of how we add value, and the reason even why the investors come here is because they know we're gonna make those intros. But at the same time, if there's like only 3 spots on the calendar, I'm gonna give them first to the 3 companies that we know the best and that we've invested in and we've worked with.
So then why would you do the Accelerator almost? I mean, other than the funding, it sounds like just be a coworker. And I'm just throwing that out.
Oh no,
because that's what
it's a
it
good
sounds.
question. That's what I was trying to answer.
That's what it
But
sounds.
yeah, no, because you want to go to those, because like all the best things go to the Accelerator companies first. Like they never get posted to the public group because they get hired first by one of the Accelerator companies. Jesse, you want to?
Yeah, so I
Because
sat.
you were there.
Yeah, so I sat here 4 or 5 months ago or whatever, and I probably asked that question. And I did join Capital Factory as a coworker and stay here for a couple of months. And frankly, I struggled with the decision of whether or not to give away 2% of my company for in a fuzzy, ambiguous benefit. It's frankly, it's not cash. So why did I decide? I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did.
Fired.
It's easier conversations with the staff here at Capital Factory. It is once a month going to a founders dinner with your other peers and talking to them about random stuff. For me, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing was being able to talk to more mentors that weren't talking to people that weren't in the program. And it sounds like that's not valuable, but having done this for a while, just a couple of ahas go a really long way. And I struggled with exactly that question. And my gamble is that there are enough ahas to make it worth my while, because I think that 1 or 2 of those things can change the trajectory of a company. And I am not getting younger. I don't think anybody here is, and life is short and we're all gonna die, so go for it, right? I mean, you've got a short amount of time, so try to get the best advice that you can, and if for a tiny little sliver, go for it. And then if there's, down the road, there's a good reason for me to start raising some money, this is a very easy, natural step for me place to do it. That's why. Which is an equally fuzzy answer, but that's the one that I went with.
Based on what you know about other cities and you've researched where you wanted to land and about the different are the incubator programs harder, easier in certain cities? Like Silicon Valley, New York have somewhat of an easier, they run through a lot more people because of their established, versus somewhere like Austin or Boulder or these other smaller cities that are popping up? Or do people transfer, well, for both of you guys, or do people like move around a lot to go chase accelerators?
I talked to a lot of people, and there's certainly people that will go to different cities for an accelerator program. If you're physically in Austin and there's Techstars in Austin, it's certainly a lot easier for Capital Factory to be here. I mean, decision points for me for moving to a city were beyond just where the best accelerator program was. It was, you know, geography and housing prices and a dozen other things. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning, and this is something that I continue to learn over time, is that so there's limited, probably your most limited resource is time. And some of these other programs, which I spent a lot of time looking into, are very, very intensive. It's kind of a 3 months, and it's like, it's a fire hose of kind of information that's coming at you. And there's a trade-off between getting a lot of information from people and actually working on your business. And working on your business is really important, and focus on it is really important. And one of the things that I like about this is that I'll turn the fire hose on for a month and talk to a ton of people, get a lot of input, and then don't schedule anything on the calendar for a month, and put my head down and progress, and then go back to the fire hose. And some of those other programs don't afford you that opportunity. So it's just worth something to consider.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the examples that you chose of cities. So Austin and Boulder are not two small cities for accelerators. Those are two really good ones.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where Techstars was started in Boulder. It's very, very strong. That's a very strong Techstars program of all the Techstars programs. Austin's very strong. So I think those aren't the greatest examples for that. I think in Silicon Valley, they aren't doing a higher volume. I think most programs do a cohort of 10 to 12 a year, or maybe they do it 2 every 3 years, 3 every 2 years. So the volume's not increasing, but I do think I would be skeptical of ones in much smaller cities than these, and really just the hardest part is do they have enough of the network and the other stuff around them to make it successful? And I feel really good when you look at the list of our mentors. Like, they're all real mentors. Like, they're all badass entrepreneurs that have all built real companies, and they're all here in Austin, and they all come here at least once a month, and they're really here. And I think you'll find as you go to smaller cities, they just have a lot of trouble getting 10 or 20 real entrepreneurs to be mentors, because there just aren't that many in the community. And so you end up with a lot of consultants or other things that just aren't really what I would go there for.
So there are these accelerators and also some entrepreneurship teaching, learning programs. And I mean, as I come from abroad, there are some that concentrate focus more on the international businesses and like plugging people into the American style of business,
Yeah.
So there is a couple of programs like that in Austin, like at Tech Ranch, And what do you think? What is your perspective on that? I don't mean to compare that to Accelerator, like directly, but what do you think?
I think those are worthwhile programs. There's I think 3 that I know of. So International Accelerator that I mentioned is one. Tech Ranch, I wouldn't quite call an accelerator program. Just it doesn't look like those other things I talked about. They don't take equity. It's not. It's a different type of thing. But they have a program that helps bring international companies here and help with some of that. And then we have a program here we call Touchdown Austin, which is also a program designed to help international companies establish a presence in Austin, hire their first employees, and really learn how to do business here and potentially attract investors. So I do think it's worthwhile. What you'll find is it's often difficult for U.S. investors to invest in foreign companies. They often require even more cleanup than a U.S. company. I remember I said one of the things Accelerators does is get them ready for investment. International companies, typically it's more complicated. Almost always we need to flip it so that it becomes a U.S. corporation with an international subsidiary. If you want to get U.S. investors, you have to flip it. That's hard, expensive, and usually one of the first things we have to deal with. And then there's often other things to figure out too. So you do have some unique challenges. You want to be around the right kind of lawyers and people that understand that and can do that cost effectively and be helpful. And they typically have different needs of both learning the culture and then plugging in a different way.
Can you please elaborate on Touchdown Austin? a bit more?
Yeah, so that's, like I said, designed for international companies that are looking to expand into the US. It's typically, it could be for a company that's moving here, but more common what we find is it's a company that's grown elsewhere and they're actually they're probably actually generally further along than the companies that are working here normally because they're now ready to expand to another city or to another country. And they're hiring their first few employees, which typically is often more of a sales organization than a development organization if they're opening another office somewhere else. And figuring out how to grow and sell there. And so some examples of companies that we've worked with here, there's one called Kahoot, which is a really successful ed tech company. They started out in Scandinavia, but I think in Sweden. But they're in a bunch of places in Europe, and they're a very virtual company, and we're their presence, here in Austin as they've grown in the U.S. I've been able to help them with that. Another one's called Stitcher Ads. They're a company from Dublin that is based in Dublin but is expanding through to the U.S. and has a team here at Capital Factory. And so again, being here, we can help a lot with recruiting because we have a lot of talent and other things coming through. We've got a team of 3 people here who focus on working with those companies, making introductions, giving them advice, helping them get service providers, other things like that. And for us right now, it's purely, we don't take any equity for that because we don't have a good structure to be able to. So you basically pay rent and a small fee on top of that for the other services to those other people. And then hopefully some of those companies at some point then end up being part of the accelerator. I think we've had one company go through that so far.
Okay, so who should I speak to about it? You or someone else?
I'm happy to talk to you, and JD, who's in the back, who will be here too, can chat. But just emailing touchdownaustin@Capital Factory will get you in touch with that team who also deals with it.
Thank you.
And on our website, if you apply to be a member here, there's
Yeah, I
a
did.
there's a thing there that says I'm interested in Touchdown Austin. You can check off. Any other questions?
On your mentors, you talked about mentors being primarily talking to you a lot about business, but then you talk about mentors being entrepreneurs who've gone through it, and you go through it, you blaze a path, you're successful, one way, you don't know other ways. You talk about that from a business standpoint, I tell you what I did and how I got there, but that's not necessarily a well-rounded business approach. It may not be what I need. I mean, help me with that piece, and help me with why. I understand that there are a lot of people successful that stay here in Austin, that would be mentor based, but why would they? If you just address that piece of it.
Let me answer or
Sure.
jump in. Number one, you talk to a lot of people because you're right. One person's path may not be your path. I think it's a skill you develop as you talk to a lot of people to filter which ones apply to you and which ones you think make sense. I think it becomes pattern recognition after a while, and after you talk to enough people, and these are short meetings, these are 30-minute meetings, and hopefully you can have a similar meeting with the same person every month or so. They start to get to know you, you get to know them, just like in life, when you start talking to people, you kind of say, okay, this is somebody that I respect and I, value their opinion, and other people you don't, and you don't go back and meeting with them again. But I think it's just a lot of talking to a lot of people as much as you can, talking to people that you might not even think are, listed of something that's similar to what you're doing, and playing the role of filtering, because a lot of times I've talked to lots of people and they'll give me conflicting advice, and that's obviously you pick one or the other, and that's what your role is as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I agree with him. Most time, even if somebody was successful, that doesn't mean even that they were. There's a great book called Lucky or Smart that is basically that whole concept, and it's someone who was very successful saying, "Hey, I was really pretty lucky." So that doesn't make them God. It doesn't make them an expert. No, there's some people that have done it like 4 or 5 times. I start to think they're pretty smart. They probably know something about what they're doing. But I think there's other ways it's really helpful. One, sometimes it's just it really it's to the pattern recognition in a different way. Sometimes it just starts to become like, oh no, I've seen this movie before. Like I know what happens next. And if you're going through that and you're doing something and someone else has seen that movie before, it's really helpful for them to tell you what's going to happen next. and what you need to go do. And that might be like, I'm doing a Kickstarter and I'm launching, that, and I've never done that before. Or it might be, I'm launching something on the App Store and, for Apple, and I've never done that before. And so what's gonna, being able to talk to somebody who's been through that specific thing is really helpful and can be a big impact. The next thing is just the introductions and connections. Like it's really, that to me, that's one of the most interesting parts, is just the power of the network that's created out of it. We've got getting close to 150 mentors. They're all business leaders. They've all run companies. They all have, most of them have hundreds or more employees. They've also got hundreds or thousands of customers. If you think of the network of relationships that creates, it's massive. It's really big. And it really only takes one introduction to completely change the trajectory of your company. If that introduction is to somebody that becomes your first investor, or your first big customer that's your pilot customer, or some key badass employee that's either a badass engineer that ends up building something awesome for you, or a badass salesperson that goes and closes your first deals, any one of those things can be completely transformational, so that's really helpful. And then the last thing I think for a lot of people is, when you're starting a company, at the beginning, it's really not about knowing what to do, it's about knowing what not to do. Like, everything's broken. You're just getting started, like there's nothing right, everything's broken, there's a million things you have to do. And so I really, it's also really helpful, and sometimes even just comforting to hear it from somebody else when they say, hey, look, don't worry about that. You should, to help you figure out what to focus on, be able to, give you permission to let something be broken, and focus on other things. So those are what I think are some of the big things out of it.
Let me just, a little bit further on that point. So the mentoring is clearly the networking, clearly the helping focus, just from a general, got it, can't beat that. And several different ideas. It just takes time, because if you're only 30 minutes, it takes time to build rapport. You're gonna have,
Well, I'll clarify that. So there's the office hour structure is 30 minutes, and we do that to make it really easy to meet people and low friction. And so you have an easy way to meet people and get 30 minutes with them. The goal is that you find people that you really connect with, and you want to have a deeper relationship, and you guys go get lunch. You go do something else, right? And that happens a lot too. So I don't want, it's not that it's limited and they're only allowed to meet with you for 30 minutes, but the way that you get introduced to them is through these 30-minute meetings, and many people, that's all they need. They meet with them for 30 minutes and they come back a month later and they're like, hey, remember what you told me to do? This is what I did, here's what I tried. Or they meet with them and they get their email address and they just, they have a few emails go back and forth. Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody once, and sometimes you want to develop more of an ongoing relationship. In the case of with our Accelerator program, when you get the matching funds, if two of the mentors invest, part of their commitment is they're committing to be your lead partner, your lead mentor, and they're meeting with you on a regular basis, more than just office hours, and really kind of developing this deeper rapport. You can't do that with 100, you can't do that with 10 people. You can do that with like 2 or 3 people, as far as just how much time you have to talk to everybody. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess the other piece of it, when I think of a business standpoint, I look at it more from a search for money, an accounting standpoint, they're setting your milestones and things like that. Those to me would take more of someone that has that type of background, an attorney or an accountant type. But when do those people? That's not mentoring. That's business advice.
Yeah, and I don't know. Those aren't the first people I would necessarily go to for that. There are people that I would want their advice, and I'll have those people at the table, but the lawyers aren't you, and they aren't an entrepreneur, and a lot of these are not black and white decisions. They're risk reward decisions, and lawyers do not make the same risk reward decisions that entrepreneurs do, and neither do accountants.
For all the years, have you ever kicked out a VC or an angel? And, or is there a qualification process where you say, hey, don't mess with these? Okay.
Yeah. The qualification process, I know them all.
Yeah.
They only get in if I know them, and we meet them, and then we test them. We have people meet with them and rate them, and then they come in, and then now that we have again close to 150 mentors, right now there's 2 or 3 mentors I got to go talk to, and we got to figure out. It's not black and white. It's hard to figure this stuff out sometimes, but it's I got to go figure out is there a problem? Do we need to talk to these guys? So yeah, we got to do that. And there's bad investors too. You got to be careful. We can't put up a big list of bad investors. That just doesn't. That's not good karma. It doesn't work good. But when we talk to people, we help them understand. and, you know, and like, again, you're an entrepreneur, you're raising money, you've never raised money from anybody before, you've never worked with any of these people before. The VCs, that's all they do all day. Like, they're really good at negotiating with entrepreneurs, and they, you know, like, and so, you know, we can say like, oh, they do that all the time, you know, like, or like, oh, like, yeah, they really mean that, or no, they don't really mean that, or, you know, or, hey, you've got, if you have options of who to talk to, like, I wouldn't talk to that one. And you'll get that just from us, you'll get that from the other people here, you know, the other entrepreneurs.
I know Techstars has a presence in Austin. You guys seem to have a good relationship with them. What's the affiliation with Y Combinator?
So no formal affiliation, but we're big fans. I think it's a great organization and a great program, and I think I have a ton of respect for the people that run it and the things they do. They produce a lot of really helpful content and other things that we use that, you know, that both think like the right things they write and other things that they do that are really awesome and really helpful. And in general, you know, we highly encourage our companies to apply for Y Combinator and participate. We have 2 companies right now at Y Combinator in their current batch that went from Austin to go there that we very much encouraged. One of the interesting things about seed investors at the stage that we're investing is nobody gives them all the money they need. Like, I don't give them all the money they need. Techstars doesn't give them all the money they need, and Y Combinator doesn't give them all the money they need. So at some level, like, once we're in, why wouldn't we want Techstars to invest too and have them, Techstars helping them too? Like, we want them to be successful. They're going to be more successful with both of us helping. They have some trade-offs to make because they have to give up equity to do all those things, but it doesn't hurt us at all in any way. I mean, it makes them more likely to be successful, doesn't take anything away from us really. Like, we have no problem with it. And Y Combinator is awesome. Like, why do I want people to go to Y Combinator? Because some of our best companies have gone to Y Combinator and they come back and they're more successful and they have all these Silicon Valley connections, and like, that's awesome for them. You know, that's great. So we would do nothing but encourage it. And that's basically how we feel about Techstars. It's a really good program. Is it a right fit? You know, with an individual company, I might say yes or no if they ask me, do I think it's a right fit for them right now? You know, like, that's not a question of whether Techstars is good or not. That's just whether that's the right thing for them right now. But in general, I'm a big fan of both of those programs. I wouldn't say that for every program. I think there are programs that are worthless. I definitely do. Techstars and Y Combinator are very good programs. So there's one behind you first, if you don't mind. There's
one question for Jesse. So you described how helpful the mentors were to you. Can you give a couple of use cases where they actually helped you out without necessarily disclosing your business?
Yeah, I don't mind disclosing my business. I'm trying to get customers, but
you haven't said what you do yet.
Yeah, so I've got a company called Dinner Elf, and we send affordable personal chefs into the homes of families to make dinner for them. So I would have lots of use cases. The current stage that I'm in right now is I'm building out a new website, and one of the big goals on the website is when somebody comes onto it to buy my product, right? So there's a lot of thought that has gone into the industry as to how do you convince somebody to buy something. And there's a number of people that are kind of UX or folks that help you decide on kind of the psychology of people when you're coming onto a website, and they have been specifically very helpful within the past 2 months, where I have changed kind of the design of my site based on feedback that they've given me.
Just talking about Capital Factory versus, say, Tech Ranch. You made reference to Tech Ranch. They've got a different, I guess, business model. I think an equity piece. But could you talk about the Tech Ranch a little bit?
I've been in Tech Ranch previous to this, so it's very different. You know, goods and bads on both sides. I would describe Tech Ranch as kind of a place that you could go when you're just getting started out, and they'll help you decide whether or not you should have a business, whether or not you know, what kind of next steps should you take. It's 2 different animals, but I would describe this Capital Factory definitely has a greater density of people and just stuff. Tech Ranch is, I would say, very collaborative and supportive. Super nice people there. But I would say if you're brand new to the game, that might be a nice soft way to get started. And then once you've, I don't know, become more comfortable with the startup world and you're looking for kind of the second level of questions and answers, then I would recommend Capital Factory.
Yeah, if you were to ask Tech Ranch what the difference is, I believe what they would say is that they are more focused on developing the entrepreneur, and we're more focused on the startup. I think this would be fair to say. I don't know if they would agree or not. I mean, as a culture comparison, I'd say that's summer camp and this is Survivor. Like, they're there to support you and help you get through that. And we're here you fight your way to the top. You disagree? Or you're
Yeah.
and that's the design of, that's how you get funding, that's how you get resources, like you gotta bubble up. And so I don't know, that's my. Other questions?
Bubble up as from the co-working into Accelerator? Or
But the accelerator part of it, is, that's where you get in, first you apply to get in, and then you go meet the mentors, and you have to get the matching funds to get to the next, level. So it is about companies kind of bubbling up.
To get to the Accelerator, is it best to come in with a solid plan, obviously with Angel's List, maybe revenue, financials, projections, MVP, like you said before? And
Reverse the order of everything you just said.
Okay.
Come in with an MVP.
Okay, MVP with a few customers.
The other stuff, if it's real.
Okay. Makes sense.
But usually it's not real. So, I mean, but yeah, if you can make reasonable projections about that stuff, very helpful. But don't make them if just because you feel like you need to make them. If you really don't have any data to support them, then that doesn't mean it.
Just prove your customer.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's about 1:15. I'll hang out here, and if any of you do want to come up and ask questions after as well, but I'll let it wrap. And so for those of you that maybe are done and are ready to go, appreciate you coming. And like I said, we got every Tuesday there's a different talk, so feel free to come back or tell other people about it. Hope that was helpful.
Josh, just want to
Thanks,
introduce
Jesse.
myself.
Thank you. Garrett?
Brian Jones Cactus.
Oh, cool. Are you the Olympian?
Yeah.
Oh.
Anyways, just wanted to say, hey, right off the bus. Before we ask you a couple
So is your product
raise about 325, trying to raise like 100, so it's difficult. As you said, never been in a position to raise money before, so it's definitely a new experience.
So what kind of questions do you have?
I'm starting to get to the end of people that I know, which is hard, and so now I'm starting to get to the point of like, someone who I got introduced to from someone else, they're introduced to someone else. And so, building that relationship, I had a question to ask someone on the first time. Yeah, and so it's like, I just try and continue the conversation week after week, present it as a product, and continue learning what I'm doing.
I do think you want to ask, but not like really. I think you want to be like, and you're looking for something. It's dated. It's exactly dated, right? So you have to be like, does this girl like me? Like that's that. But you can't be like, do you want to have sex? Like like that's the analogy, right? It's like you're meeting them. You can't be like, do you want to invest? Like you got to date them, and so you have to try to see if there's a spark and understand if they're interested. A good way is like just asking them to begin because that's pretty good indicator. Hey, do you want to get lunch? Can we meet some more about it in 2 weeks? Can I take any of these suggestions? You'd be like, hey, I'm going to try that. I'm going to show you what I did. And so getting to spend more time is a good indicator. And at some point, most people aren't just going to waste your time if going to take a lot of meetings. I'd say after 2 or 3 meetings, you can say, hey, does this look like something we should invest in? And then another great thing to do is to say, hey, what would you need to see to make this?
That's something I learned.
Try to phrase that question, right? Like, it's like, just because they answer doesn't mean they'll even stick to it. So it's not perfect, but like that's the right question to ask. It's like, well, if this isn't like, well, what would make this really exciting to you? Like, would I need to have a big business customers? What do they need to have a certain amount of revenue? Like, what is it, you know, and start to at least zero in on what you think that is.
Yeah, that makes sense. I learned that this past week. Had 3 different meetings with business, and then they came back and said, actually, we're looking at between 1 and 2 million in trailing revenue. I'm like, why didn't you tell me at the beginning, dude?
Right.
So that was a great lesson learned, just being asked. I was letting you guys know.
And part of it's also learning as upfront to set the expectations. Like, here's where I'm at, you know, here's what I'm looking to do. Another great thing is to look at companies like yours in similar spaces and other people that have invested in it.
Yeah.
Those are people that know the space, like it, interested in it.
Alright.
Was it a CPG thing? What was it?
It is, yeah. So we select athletes from and then also government. So started at $9,600. So and I've gotten like 1% committed to investing. It's just hard.
Yeah, so you gone to the CPG people in town and talked to Dan Graham?
Yeah, I've talked to Dan's on my board advisors, Clayton next week, David Smith this week.
So you're doing the right thing.
I'm working at it. I'm going to Wood for lunch tomorrow. It's too early for them. They don't really focus on this space.
Yeah, they're not. They'll be doing whatever you want.
I think he'll be really great insight and a lot of stuff. I'm working hard at it. It's just I'm not the most patient person. So, anyways, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, John.
So, it's funny because I saw your video online and I noticed that you're friends with Joe. So it's funny because I company called Ava that does funding. Yeah, I met him and I had a good time. I think but I'm just a small company. I recently moved here 3 months ago. So, but yeah, I wanted to ask you, I'm in the design industry. What would you describe as service design. Yeah. It's a different type of design. So a lot of sort of touch on this. So service design came out of the UK, specifically around design services, which is the extension of products. So it's about designing across channels, touch points, rather than just designing like screen interactions. So it's a multidisciplinary approach, much more focused around doing
What kind of companies are you?
Healthcare. I actually outside the company, so retail, which one's good?
I didn't say which one's good. Which one's good?
Hire for.
How are you? Well, I work healthcare, like.
Yeah, well, I don't have my own company yet, but the kind of things
Big company.
Yeah, big companies, but some startup. I mean, some ones that actually have worked with insurance companies do a startup, and they were doing an accelerator type of activity within the obviously companies. They build funding instead of the company. They build funding and they hire consultants and they have their own tools and you get business people in, you get customer development, all that kind of stuff. The thing that's interesting is a lot of the activities that business designers, some like visual design interaction to like level, but from a more strategic or holistic standpoint, how these kind of people come in to help the companies understand the definition stage, how to build the customer based on their particular needs. That's kind of like the reason why I do it. Yeah, the reason I was going to get to the question, but what I wanted to do, and actually ask is I want to actually do here. My first question to you was like, are there design companies or people coming in doing like design?
Yeah, general design sure. It tends to be more specific design. But yeah,
one of the things that I wanted to do is start a specifically service design.
Service design, I know that.
Yeah, they're actually concerned about the design. There are companies that actually do this. like, projects that you does it, my work does it. It's not necessarily that pervasive. It's not so that's why I thought maybe an interesting thing to do, but what I want to do is I want to do free events where we're actually putting people through like designers. But I want to like further.
Yeah, I have no idea what the name would be for something like that, but yeah, that kind of stuff happens. Not, not services.
Yeah, it's related. I mean, like UX. But I thought today was really great, and I saw your other video for talking about the social capital of Austin.
That's next week's one, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because that was the stuff that I was talking about with Joey. He was talking about scenes and stuff like that, which
Most of that came from Joey.
when you started saying, I'm like, oh yeah, this is all shit. It's totally from like, I was like, this is great. Like, it's really interesting to see like how that conversation goes.
Thank you to meet you. Thanks for coming today. Hey, how's it going?
My name is Max.
Max?
Slava.
Nice to meet you. Max, how's it going?
We built a building and marketplace that connects academic test tutor and students preparing for SAT, JRE, those kinds of tests. We're from Moscow. Yeah, we just came like a month ago. It's in the valley for a year, and I just came here. So we were thinking about the sitting here, and I actually already applied. And the question is whether we should really think about the accelerator. And in terms of our revenues in Russia, we do have about 7K monthly revenue and some like couple of sales in the States. So is it traction for you, really?
Yeah, so that's the right level of traction, and so certainly would encourage you guys to apply. I think that just to give you some immediate quick feedback, this is a very crowded space. We've seen a lot of companies in the tutoring space. We've worked with it already. No problem. We can work with you too. But I think those are the questions you're going to get. Is really how are you going to differentiate or stick out, because there's a lot of people doing this.
Yeah, that's the thing. We were thinking how to
traction-wise, you're right.
Yeah. Are there any spots or let me rephrase? Are there any opportunities that can help us to disrupt the market? Change some of the processes so it would be much more effective.
Sorry for interruption. I was in this business for 17 years in Russia, but it was purely offline business. But what we have seen for the last 2 years, the part of the online students, it was growing from the 0 to about 15 to 20%. And we have realized that it's time to start online marketplace to help students find tutors for offline and online tutoring. And Wizen, Verblink, FabTech, there are so many players in this market niche. So, market niche, I mean test preparation.
Online tutoring,
Online tutoring, test preparation.
I don't quite call that niche. I think it's a big market.
So, and we understand that we should differentiate ourselves with the competitors. And we have some ideas, we have hypotheses. We need this help from the mentor side to make decision what will work in the US and what won't.
So I think that's the kind of thing that people here could be very helpful with. I don't know. I don't promise like we have the magic answer for you.
Sure.
But they're the kinds of people that will at least have lots of questions. They'll ask you lots of questions because if that's the right thing you're asking. I can just tell you. I see. I probably see one every other month. That's in that space. You can take different approaches. Not everyone's doing it exactly the same. But general idea of marketplace, students, tutors, Sometimes they're just matching them up. Sometimes they're providing a full technology solution for video conferencing and note taking and recording it and like, other things like
We are
that.
going to go this way to give this, yes, this solution to the tutors, for them not to manage their clients, but rather to teach them only, and to have all the procedures, I mean SMS, email, online calendar, and so on and so forth, everything move out of the tutors, to give it to them as a service. But for example, if on Monday we will start to be here at your co-working or every day, from your experience, how will it work? I mean, those contacts, those meetings with the mentors.
So you have to, if you come and you sit here and you just go sit in the corner, nothing is done. You have to go. So by working here, you can start to sign up for office hours, and every day you might meet with 1 or 2 or 3 different people who you can talk to about
So
what
it's
you're working
possible
on.
to meet any day.
Every day there's between 5 and 10 different people here. Yeah. Now sometimes, if you look today, they might all be booked out. So you might have to be booked 2 weeks from now to start. But every day, there's
But
5 or
anyway,
10
it
people.
happens every day.
Yeah, about 125 a week.
125
Meetings, yeah. Meetings, yeah. I have one person's full-time job. That's all they do, is manage meetings. So every day, lots of people. And so that's a lot of people to talk to. Also, I get ideas from free.
Let's go update.
Just go to our website, capitalfactory.com/mentors. You see the whole list.
Yes.
And there's about 130 people.
And you mean that I'll be able
That's who
to
comes
meet
in.
majority of them?
Well, so what Jesse was saying is, there's a lot of different people, and the people that you want to meet the most are the busiest. And so the busiest say, you know what, because I'm so busy, I only want to meet with the companies that are the furthest along. And so for that, they would say, I'm only gonna meet with Accelerator companies. So there's basically 2 calendars. There's one calendar for everyone that works here, and one calendar only for the Accelerator companies. And it's really just a filtering mechanism. And so I'd say a third of the mentors on the site you can get to just from working here. They're still really good, but not the ones that like invest $1 million, because everybody wants to talk to them and they want to spend their time with the ones that are, But a lot of people, a lot of really helpful.
We better have that or.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you.
Great to meet you guys. Hope that helped.
Thank you.
See you around.
Awesome. Hi there.
I just want to say hi. My name is Daniel. I really enjoy these. I just started it's a great area.
Where did y'all come from?
We came from Los Angeles.
Oh, cool.
You're welcome.
We've been here just about a year.
That's with John Brackett. Hey, John. I like the news very good. This is my first time here. I think I'll come Tuesday.
Yeah, next week's is, this is fairly focused on a very specific topic. Next week is like, what's the story of Austin, and where are all the places to hang out? Like, it's much more of a very broad overview, so it's very cool.
I look forward to it.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sure, I might as well. Oh, okay. So good to boring. I'm Chelsea.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Mark.
We are a
Got recorded today, when does it get posted?
It's not automatic, because someone, they have to go in and YouTube verify us copyright stuff and things like that. So it's usually, it's up there by at least the next day.
My nephew, I started
And all the excellence are up there too. Search for us.
First of all, you don't really want residuals, because they're all super cheap. And that's a first thing. So most of the people that I talk to after this conversation, I have to set their expectations. Like, you don't actually really want to these here, because most of them, and that's really more when they're here. If you think about it, so we still have relationships with them, but I'm just pointing out that it's actually not like I'm here. It's like as they graduate here, they start to have the ability to go, do those kinds of things and work with high quality partners and things like that. And so, a lot of our programs it's less about the companies that are here and reminding them of the pipeline of them as they leave. We have an event next week we call Op Shop. You don't really have a better name for it, but it's the first time we're doing this, but we have a lot of these partners, and so it's gonna be an event, and it's all about like, I'm ready to move out and get my own office, and we've got like lawyers there, and like the cable providers, and real estate guys and girls, and I think there might be a PR representative there, there's a data provider, I mean, just all these other types of things that you might need to work with that we're not that size. So that's that part of it. The other, I'd say most people that are in that situation that want to engage, still after realizing that people here aren't really quite ready yet, typically, look at possibly getting involved as a mentor or something and basically becoming a member. But people don't go to a lot of classes. Maybe, but it's harder to get. I would say the first step for us would be just being mentors, meeting people one-on-one, and like trying to get some advice or help, and maybe doing a class too. And that might be a fit if that's the right thing. But again, that's not a way to go get a bunch of business. That's more a way to plug into the community, meet people, and be in a position a year or two later when some of those grow to maybe do that. Also, the other way is it's a chance to, if you go help one of the startups here, possibly pro bono or obviously they don't have a lot of money, it's kind of a good way to show off in front of the mentors. Mentors all run big companies that that stuff, and so if you come in here and you do something really good for one of the companies, people hear about it, right? And they're like, oh wow, you should, that word travels fast. So that's another way to do it.
And who would I talk to if I was interested in doing mentoring?
So two things. So one is you could join as a member and start to get mentored. On the mentoring side, probably from our perspective, like our kind of bringing people and vetting them, I want to talk to we have 1,000 people that work here, so I want to talk to somebody that's worked with you. So it's kind of like, we have all the mentors, we have all the companies here, and I want to hear from one of them, like, oh yeah, we had a great experience, and have some kind of a reference from somebody we found. Yeah.
Oh, okay, because
I'm sure you have tons, right? But ideally it's from somebody in our network that we know. We have a really big network, so you might not have it right now, but like if you're here in Austin, you're doing stuff, that shouldn't.
Emily Leach, right? Started the Freelance Association here in Austin.
I might know her, I'm just not recognize her. Does that help?
It does. Thank you so very much. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You guys
yeah. I've been a songwriter for a long time, and I made it happen. I'm not sure if I'm at the point. I'm sort of not sure what to do right now.
Yeah.
So can I show it to you?
Is it a quick show?
Yeah, it's a very quick show. So it makes radio stations for all of your friends, and you can listen to each other's radio stations.
And is it music or something else?
It's music. And licensing is all, that's where I come from, is the licensing, so licensing's all good.
Did you see what just launched today? There was a radio station for everybody.
Anchor? No.
You didn't see Anchor?
No.
Like, it's a radio station for everybody.
I have to check it out.
Everybody a broadcaster. It's like, they're like the true public radio, that's what they call it, so you should check it out.
That's a good, we'll see, there's a lot of things.
It was